So the only order of business that we've got today is the 2021 budget, which is a draft of which was provided in the packet. Just waiting for it to open. Come on. Basically what we did here is what we always do for the most part, and typically that means laying out the expenses for the year and then backing into the revenue, so we have a balanced budget, unless we know there's no possible way to get to a balanced budget. You'll notice that this year we added a line under expenses for marketing. We did put $20,000 there. That is an estimate of what the cost for the ongoing maintenance and launch that phase 3 of the TGW contract. We anticipate that will primarily be what comes in 2021. Everything else should be done in 2020. Okay. So we only put that $20,000 for phase 3. We still have a range for that scope of work, but $20,000 was towards the top end of it and is a nice round number. So we just tossed that into the expenses. That does mean that the budget for revenue for 2021 is about $20,000 higher than it was in 2020. That's what that is offsetting. Everything else is more or less the same. The audit costs are a little bit projected to be a little bit more expensive, but other than that, everything is pretty much the same. We'll talk about later today, there might also be a land sale in 2021. There's a project that's looking to purchase some land, which is not accounted for here, but some of that will come off the balance or the budget, the balance sheet anyways. So the income from that land sale is a little hard to estimate at this point, but I don't foresee reaching admin fees of, almost $51,000 to be an issue between this project that's we expect an application for in the next month or two, and I'm relatively confident Courier is coming in next year. I've been saying that for 3 or 4 years now, but they seem on track for the spring of 2021 at this point, and if they're saying that in 2020, then they must be telling the truth, because nobody would plan for spring of 2021 at this point if they didn't mean it. So I do think that that'll come in, and that'll be a sizable fee from that project as well. So I don't think that these projections are out of line, as long as those 2 projects come through and, we kind of do the typical business that we do. So that's kind of the update on where we are with the budget.
Okay. Yeah.
Thoughts, questions, concerns?
I'm good.
Good.
No, it's good. Yeah, the only question I had was on that marketing for Auburn brand, and made sense. I figured that's what it was, but I just wanted to confirm. So, but yeah, no, other than that, everything is pretty standard for us. So
yeah, not much changes from year to year from an expense perspective, other than these special projects. So if we were putting the entire amount of that TGW contract into the expenses, I might not have evened it out the same way, knowing that this is a special project, but for the 20,000, I don't think it's going to be a big deal.
Okay.
So unless there's any other updates that need to be made, all we need to do is decide if we'll recommend this to the board at the regular meeting at 5 o'clock.
I'm good with that.
Yeah, same here. Yep.
Great, 5-minute meeting.
All right. It's my kind of meeting.
I know.
Now we just have to wait.
Yeah, I know. Actually, I'm gonna turn my camera and microphone off and do some work, some Medent related work here for a little bit.
Okay, so we'll say that we are adjourning at 4:37, and we will see you back at 5.
All right, sounds good.
Perfect. Do the
Thanks.
same. Thanks, guys.
Okay, I'll call the meeting of the Auburn Industrial Development Authority to order Wednesday, October 21st, 2020 at 5 p.m. We are meeting remotely due to COVID. Can I have roll call, please, Taylor?
Mr. Andre,
Present?
Mr. Beer,
Here.
Mr. Giantino,
Here?
Mr. Gasper.
Here.
Mr. LaBarnway.
Here.
Ms. Weber McLeod. She's absent. Mr. Cuddy. Absent. Mr. Gravius. Absent. Mr. Dacey. Absent.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Has everyone had an opportunity to review the minutes of the September 16th regular meeting and the September 16th Governance Committee meeting? If so,
Yes.
can I have a motion to approve?
So moved, Ron.
Have a second?
Roger.
Thank you. It's been seconded and moved. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Abstain? Carried. We will now move on to bills and communications. Has everyone had a chance to review TGW and CETA quarter 3? If so, with no questions, can I have a motion for A and B, please?
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
One of the comments in their engagement letters that they're going to bill us as the work progresses, which is fine. As you may know, they're billing us in advance, and no work is being done. The bill is not due till the end of October, so that's going to be our process here. Is that we're going to, in some cases, pay them in advance.
Have begun doing the work, and it looks like there's Gavin. We're going to have a discussion with where we are right now and where we are in the research phase, which will be moving pretty quickly. But we can certainly have a conversation with Gavin and Lisa if she is going to be joining us about the billing structure.
Very good. Thank you.
Okay, you all set, Roger?
Yes, I am.
Okay. Okay, so it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Abstain? Carried. Thank you. We will now move to for report of the treasurer.
Okay, actually it's on page 12 of the packet, the profit and loss budget performance for September 2020. And I would point out that in September we had 9350 in admin fees, which came from Avstar. So that was a nice fee coming in. Our major expense for the month of September and the quarter ending September in the left-hand column is $6,000 or $5,000 for our quarterly admin fee from CETA. And I see we have a credit for travel and meetings, which is nice. In any event, you can see, just to get a sense of where we are for the year, our fees to date in the January-September 20 column are almost 180,000. So obviously some pretty solid things happening this year, and this is what is allowing us to take on the branding project. So solid year. We'd love to repeat more of them, but in any event, you'll see later in the presentation, we'll have a budget presentation for 2021, and we'll talk more about the plans for next year at that time.
Okay. Does anyone have any questions for Roger? Tracy, do we have anything for the Q3? Is that part of what Roger just did, or was just that was? Okay,
Yeah,
Thank
the
you.
Q3 invoice is the page before as part of the bills.
okay. All right, I've got that. Thank you. All right, if there's no more questions, can I have a motion, please?
So moved, Ron.
I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Abstained? Carried. Thank you. We will now move on to unfinished business. The branding discussion with TGW.
Tracy, what about the pilot disbursement report?
Yeah, Bill, did you want to?
Oh, I'm so sorry. I apologize. Are there any questions about the pilot disbursement report that we all received?
You know, I had just one observation. Where you can see in the Bluefield Manor that we are now, that's payment 20 of 20, I believe. And so I guess it's just another call to action, so to speak, to have that matter resolved at some point in time as to how we're going to go forward, because this is, am I correct in that, Tracy? I think this is their last one.
Yes, this would be the last year on the pilot. I do believe that they are working to get a full exemption via their nonprofit status. So it seems like that is the direction that they are moving at this time, which would not necessitate a extension of the pilot. So as of right now, I'm expecting it to expire this year. And Taylor had a couple of updates on some of the payments coming in.
So I had 3 payments come in. Auburn Community Hotel, Community Computer, and Mac Studios have all paid. You'll see them next month on the disbursement report. So those will be hitting the account.
And I guess as a nice follow-up, I guess as a follow-up to that, Taylor, is the fact, Taylor and Tracy's, as with many landlords in the era of COVID, some folks are missing their rental payments. Do you have any sense of any of our payments being perhaps at risk this year?
I haven't heard anything pertaining to that.
Okay.
I've also not heard anything pertaining to that. These are tax payments. So there are, I mean,
there's leverage if they don't make the payment. So,
right.
okay.
Thank
I
you,
wanted
Roger.
to raise that question just because of the various circumstances that are existing in the COVID era.
Okay, any other questions on that? Thank you for pointing that out to me. I'm sorry I missed it. Can I have a motion, please? Or has it already been moved?
We don't need a motion for that. It's
Okay,
just a
I'm
report.
sorry. Just conversation. Okay, I'm sorry. We'll move on to unfinished business, the discussion with TGW. Hi, Lisa.
So I'd like to introduce Lisa and Gavin from TGW. This is the first time some of you are meeting them. And
Hi,
we
folks.
wanted to bring them in to give you an update and let you know where we are now, next steps, and answer any questions about the contract and how we move forward. So I don't know if you two want to introduce yourselves officially to the full group.
Sure,
Yeah, Lisa,
absolutely.
go ahead.
Okay, sure. Hi, everybody. This is Lisa from TGW Studio. Gavin and I are the founding partners there. We've been lucky enough to have met or at least seen most of your faces already, but nice to meet everyone that we have not yet. Yes, we are a social impact marketing studio, and we have already started to hit the ground running with Tracy and Devin in terms of the place branding process for Auburn. Very excited about it. We have already jumped into the first phase, of which, gathering and analyzing existing research. There's several studies that are accessible to us that we've been appreciative of. And next week, we are conducting the first focus group along with some phone interviews. And the following week, we will be doing a branding workshop. So, we've got some things lined up. We wanted to provide just a little quick brushstroke of what the first phase looks like. It's, we're trying to get as much strategic things done before the end of the year, and sort of using that as much of a milestone as possible, so that we can really just try to be as efficient as possible for you folks. But we've already uncovered some really cool and interesting things. Gavin and I will be meeting with some small business owners this Thursday to just do some general intros, socially distanced introductions, and meet some people. But again, we're super honored and excited to do this work with you folks, and we're planning on, in addition to the board meetings, in which I'm sure Tracy and Devin will be giving you updates about the project, we'll be providing an email summary, or in some way just sort of a status update every few weeks, so that we can kind of just make sure that everybody feels like they know what's going on, because there's a lot of moving parts at the moment. And just make sure everybody knows what's going on, and get as much feedback and suggestions from the board. Gavin and I couldn't speak highly enough about you folks when we initially had the interview with you all. We were like, what a dynamic group. Everybody looks so different. Everybody was just so interesting, and we just think it's such a really great opportunity to get to know you all. So thanks again. And Gav, I don't know if I missed anything, but
Yeah, no, I think that really nails it. I'm Gavin, the other founding partner, as Lisa mentioned. The full TGW team is extremely thrilled to be participating and helping out in this process. I think one of the just in terms of general expectations, I know we went through a couple of different line items, but I know you're probably all wondering, when are we going to see the beautiful stuff, the logo and the website? And that's coming very quickly. As Lisa said, there are many moving parts, but really right now, unfortunately for you all, fortunately for us, we're really in that input and research phase that you don't get to see anything great for another month or so. But know and trust that we, as Lisa said, we've been hitting the ground running, and are just finding some really amazing research and tidbits of information that will be very beneficial, and are extremely excited about the focus group coming up, and then tomorrow's trip as well, to do some more informal walkthroughs with a couple of business owners who have recently gone through some pretty big moves. So I think we'll gain some really good insights from that perspective of what it's like to really be growing and exploding business in Auburn, and what really attracts business to the area. So we're very excited about that, as well as the phone interviews as well. So we so greatly appreciate the patience. I know it might be tough to kind of wonder during this phase what's going on, but we really are working very very hard with Tracy and Devin, as Lisa mentioned, and are excited to hopefully bring some really great stuff to the table for the city.
And then a couple of things I'd like to point out is that, one, the research phase is coming in under budget. We're very excited about it. It's a good start. The other, Devin and I are on a weekly phone call with Lisa and Gavin and Shelly, right, from your team. And this group had talked about having a couple of board members involved in this process as a guiding group. So we may occasionally look to bring those folks into those weekly meetings. They'll also be getting those updates as we get them from TGW. So I figured Gwen and Terry in particular, but Roger, if you'd like to stay engaged, we can also include you in those updates. And as we have meetings that need that guidance from the board level, we will make sure to incorporate a few of you in those as well to stay engaged.
Well, one comment I have, I certainly, I guess, agree with Gavin's observation that the people he's met on the board are very interesting and creative people. So I I couldn't agree more with that observation about us. So, but in terms of, we have an engagement letter in the packet tonight. Is that something we're going to execute tonight? Or is that something that's already been executed?
I don't know. Have we sent you a signed letter yet? Engagement letter yet? Yes, it would
We
be great
haven't.
to execute that tonight.
Okay.
I didn't know if we were going to jump in because I had the same answer, Tracy.
Like, I don't remember if I signed this or not.
Well, that's, you know, those of us that have been in that type of work, you know, you go forward without a signed engagement letter at your peril. But I think that we'll be good for it. I'm looking, you know, from what I saw, just from, I'm going to speak from a, I guess, financial perspective. And so just a quick overview, it still looks like we're in that 80,000 plus or minus range. And so I think that's something that's been consistent, so all the board should know that. One thing this is a real in the weeds type of housekeeping question, but in addition to the real substance of the project, which is a great brand and all that sort of thing, we internally will be doing some accounting. And in terms of bringing on a website, the accounting for the project allows us either to capitalize or expense certain items. It occurred to me that you, as the consultants, have probably, is it possible you've encountered various clients who like you to present the invoices in such a way that it's obvious that amount that should be expensed versus that amount that should be capitalized? I'm just curious because we have the capability of doing it ourselves, but I'm just curious if in some cases you detail the invoices so that because certain stages like planning can be expensed, whereas application and infrastructure development is capitalized. Is that something that you get involved with at all in terms of pointing that out or designating such things in your invoices so that we would have support as to how we account for it?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, you know, one of the things that we can certainly do, we're happy to go through and even provide more detail, because there are probably items along that process that we've bucketed into a larger group just for simplicity at this stage, that we're happy to revisit and kind of, you know, if you present the beneficial aspects of that for you all as the board and the organization, you know, we can certainly break that up in any way that makes the most sense for you. We certainly want to make that happen, and have certainly done it in the past. We've done,
Okay.
you know, things with timing in terms
Okay.
of,
So it's not an unusual request on our part then?
Nope, not at all.
And plus the fact, you know, with us being a governmental quasi nonprofit entity, the idea of tax deductibility is not quite the issue it would be with your typical for-profit client. So I don't want to belabor this, but that would be very helpful to have that information. We have rigorous auditors, and I imagine they'll inspect these invoices in great detail to ensure that we've properly accounted for things. So.
Absolutely. And I think as we work with Tracy and Devin a little bit more and get to those phases, I think they'll be able to identify, you know, some of the work that has even, you know, been done or we've started or are about to start, because, you know, certainly we'll be ahead of the game in terms of looking ahead a few weeks at least. And, you know, they'll be able to identify, I think, really well what you're looking for, and then we can make adjustments as necessary. We're happy to do that.
Good. Thank you. Appreciate that.
Of course.
Anything more? Well, I guess we're all done then. We thank you both for coming tonight and sharing this exciting information. Continue the good work, please, and thank you.
Thanks so much for having us.
Yes.
One further administrative question. Would we need a vote on signing the engagement letter, or is that part of the original agreement that we made a couple of weeks at the last meeting?
Oh, Tracy, you're muted.
We can't hear you.
Broke it. Did I break it?
Oh.
You're back.
Very, very, can slightly hear you at best. So.
I broke it.
You're back.
Oh, I'm back? Okay.
No.
Technology. Okay. I would say it would be great to have a motion tonight. I think technically the last motion probably covered it, but it would be good to have a motion tonight for this particular engagement letter.
So moved that we accept the engagement letter from TGW.
It's
Yeah.
been
I'll second.
moved by Roger, seconded by Gwen. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed, abstained? Very good, it passed. Thank you.
Thanks very
Excellent.
much, everyone.
Thank
Now
you.
you can
Great
Thanks,
start.
everybody.
Same to you, Deb.
Enjoy the
Take
rest
care.
of your weeks. All right. Bye-bye.
Yes. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Okay, very good. We'll move on to, oh goodness. We go to B, which is report of the governance committee pilot criteria discussion.
So in your packet, there is a, oh, this is weird.
Tracy, I can barely hear you.
Here, let me work on my settings a bit. So in the packet, there is a list from, there is a list from a previous governance committee meeting. And that covers some of the conversation that was had by Gwen and Terry and Jim, I believe, about really looking through some of the priorities that we would like to start to define as a group as the board is evaluating projects and how to incentivize projects. This has been in the packet a couple of times, so we actually get to have the conversation tonight. And you can see some of the industries that were mentioned as the types of industries we do typically support, as well as some of the metrics that they discussed as important components of incentivizing projects around jobs, what percentage of incentives to project cost, the wages, perhaps there can be some consideration for the wage levels and whether they're living wage jobs that are being created. The local labor component came up, and then some of the values that the group discussed as important to them that could be considered in this conversation. So I don't know if Gwen or I don't remember who else. I just said it. Who else was in that conversation? Terry. Oh, it was Terry and Jim, and neither of them are there. So Gwen, if you have anything to add here.
Yeah, Jimmy's here too. I found this to be a very interesting exercise because I think it gave us an opportunity to look at current approaches used to decide or discern who we'd want to enter into pilot kinds of relationships with. But I think the other thing that it gave us the opportunity to do was to think a little bit about what kind of community do we really want to have, and what types of businesses will help us have the kind of community that we want. So I love that we looked at things that I would say would be pretty traditional and hard, right? The industries to support, the metrics, that kind of thing. But I think the discussion about the community values is equally important because we really can, in the work that we do, support the development of a very specific kind of community and that drives our economic development, our economy, that also not only, I think, honors the success and the hallmark companies in our community, but makes room for us to also provide support for those emerging entrepreneurs who will be innovating and doing innovative things. So I think that this was a very important conversation to have, and that I look forward to utilizing this information as we're vetting people who might be wanting to renew or to do some kinds of adjustments in their existing pilots, but also for us to utilize when we're looking at new projects. The other thing, Tracy, is that I would encourage you to take a look at this and, as appropriate, start to communicate about this as part of your writing for the newspaper as you think it's appropriate, to talk about how we're going about what we're doing and why it's important for us to consider moving in this way.
I had a question, and looking at it, first of all, it's very interesting that this dovetails, hand in glove with the branding project. I mean, that's what we're doing as well. And so I see this, as a wish list. And the way that I guess being analytic, I suppose, the fact that manufacturing is at the top of the list does not indicate, does it, that it's the number one? These are not listed in order of priority then.
Tracy, did you organize them that way? I don't recall us having that conversation. Okay. I think we were basically taking a look at what kinds of companies are kind of here, what kinds of companies we might want to onboard as well. And we did, I think, really talk about, I think we talked about this too, Roger, during our interviews with the marketing companies, that, there still is a percentage of our community that really is longing for the good old days of Columbia Rope, right? And that we know,
Good old days, yes.
Yeah, we know that some of those companies, that part of what we have the ability to do through AIDA is to honor companies that are on that trajectory of work. But I also think we have an opportunity to look at some of these newer kinds of businesses that have an equal possibility of doing pretty amazing things within this criteria to continue to build an economy in our community, not only to support those of us now, but to build a future for those two little men folk I have in my house, the grandsons. So I loved that opportunity to be forward thinking for the generations that'll come behind us as well. So I didn't experience this as a prioritized list.
Mm-hmm.
I just think we were shooting out ideas.
Yes. Well, I agree with you. The honoring the old and bringing in the new, if only in some cases, because we may not have a choice. Manufacturing may not be
right
that voluminous to have. Of course, if whatever Tessie wants to do, we certainly will be receptive to that. Mm-hmm. So, it was interesting. It's a separate exercise, but yet it really does fit with the branding project, so that we're kind of thinking about these things, whether we're thinking governmentally or whether we're thinking branding. So I think hopefully it'll come to fruition.
Well, I was thinking about the alignment of these two things at the time that we had this conversation. But Tracy, this could be really interesting to also share with TGW, and as they're doing focus groups and having conversations, to have them look at some companies that are in, that are on this list, and have them maybe speak to some of them that are either here, or just find some that what would it take to interest a business like yours. So I see where there could be a relationship between this piece of work and what they're about to do.
Yeah, and I think also it's a good idea to think about these community values and see if those are being echoed by the folks that they're having conversations with.
I agree.
Great idea, Roger. Were there other thoughts on the values that people had in reviewing this? Were there other things that you thought were important that might have been missed in these values? If we start to think around these metrics, are there other metrics that you'd like to explore? We obviously didn't put specific numbers in here, but as we kind of round this information out, did we miss anything?
That,
14,
yeah, it's a lot of work. I appreciate the work you guys put into it. It looks really good. Very thorough. The living wage is very important to me. A lot of times we've celebrated pilots that, that people can't afford to take care of themselves and their families, and that's something that I like to try to stay away from.
I'm glad to see the environmentally sustainable issues are described, because that has to be the priority of the next decade coming up. And I hope we can be at the front edge of that, as opposed to certainly don't want to be lagging behind in that area. So
I agree with that point. I was thinking the same thing, Roger, especially as we're getting ready to vote on new rules and regulations for the watershed. It seems like all the moons are aligning right now for some reason,
we have no choice. We have,
Yeah.
when you're not given a choice, then it's easy to see what the direction is.
Right.
We're running out of time.
Well, I think the other piece of it too is that it acknowledges through our lens and from our point of view, I think that some of our back conversation was really looking at the poverty stats of the county. And I think a lot of times they live, so almost like in addition to, what's really going on here. So to also look at how a company could create good job opportunity for underserved or low-income people also helps us build a better quality of life for those in our community. So I love that it has a great mix of values that are almost technically related and values that are really focused on the quality of life, and allows AIDA to participate in addressing a major community issue that we all know is negatively impacting every entity, not-for-profit as well as public education sector in our county. So if we can inspire companies to do things that can help us impact that, that's the role that we can play as well. So I loved that the values were pretty well rounded.
Okay. Anything else before we move on? Thanks again, everyone.
I think I was just going to add one thing, Bill.
Go ahead.
Maybe even something down the road, adding something around training into those kind of values or metrics. Something around training for people as well. It's kind of implied, I think, by this, but it may be calling it out at a later time. But I agree with all the other comments. Are definitely a good summation of everything.
Yeah.
I think it could be added, Jeffrey. I also think that this will help us think about the kinds of questions we want to ask applicants. So we can certainly ask them to demonstrate it in the application process, but I also think when we're having conversations with them, however we frame the questions, I want to know what that looks like when they're doing it. And so I think anything you think we should be specific about, I know you're taking a look at this list, but I would invite you to send those other ideas into Tracy.
We can create a little checklist or cheat sheet that we can send out, maybe with the cost benefit analysis, a reminder of each project of what these things are for your consideration, not necessarily with answers, just like, here's the bullet list of what we talked about.
Okay, are we ready to move on? Thank you, everyone. Great discussion. Tracy, can you give us a seat of staff update, please?
So there are a couple of projects that I just want to put on your radar. The first is Cameron's Bakery. Danielle and Taylor have been working a lot with Tony. They are planning a expansion. It's going through the site plan review right now, and he's aligning his financing, but that may or may not come before this group, depending on how the budget works out. So I'm just putting that on the radar. I don't know how familiar any of you are with this project, but what they're proposing in their site plan is to build a new facility that is larger behind their existing facility. And then once that's built and they're moved into it, tearing down the existing facility and creating more parking and just cleaning up a little bit. They're planning on putting a drive-through into the new facility as well, which I think is part of what's being discussed with the site plan, is the drive-through component and making sure that they have enough space for that. So that, with the way the budget is arranged, I'm not sure that it will get to the level of an AIDA application, but very well could, especially for a sales and use tax and mortgage recording tax. So it's very possible that that will come before this body, you know, in the coming months. And there would be some job creation with that project as well. But they're looking at adding new product lines and you know, expanding hours and you know, just being holistically more overall. And they've been in the community for a long time. It's a good, long-standing Auburn business, so we're excited to see them working towards that. The other project is we've had a couple of meetings with Mac Studios. We'll get into this a little bit more later in the meeting with an executive session, but they are also planning their next expansion. They would be looking to potentially purchase some land, as well as do a pilot and the sales incentives. It sounds like they're talking about right now, we don't have an official application from them yet, but it sounds like right now they are discussing creating about 6 jobs. It would be a completely warehousing, but they actually are paying a good amount for these 6 jobs. The average wages they're saying will be 40 to 50,000, which is not bad for warehousing jobs. So, and they are going to include some additional kind of modern components for energy efficiency and making sure that that facility is, you know, like adjusting the lighting even, like things are getting very technical these days. I don't know, but they are keeping these in mind and making sure that the new building would be energy efficient and both for economic and environmental purposes. And it's a pretty good project. So they're looking forward to doing that. They really need some more space just because their business has been growing. They've had a very good year. So, and they're thinking about the future and future product lines, which is great. So it's nice to see that business doing well as well. So that will be coming soon. Jim, Jenny, and I were just in there yesterday, discussing the pilot and the land. We would like a 15-year plan for discussion, and we can talk about the land piece. We'll need to talk about that in an executive session. So, so those are 2 projects.
What was the first business you were talking about?
What's that?
What was the first business you were talking about?
That was
Scanning?
Cameron's.
Okay, that's what I didn't catch. Okay, thank you.
And then I did mention to Jimmy and Jeff earlier, it does sound like Courier is, knock on wood, looking at 2021. So that project is still moving forward. It's not necessarily paused the way some projects are. Avstar has moved forward. They are doing their construction right now. So there's been some really good activity. We just did a ribbon cutting with Casa Latina, which we're very excited about downtown. And that's a really great addition to Cayuga County. It offers products for a different population than we've really served. So we're excited about that one too. We are, the other big one, Derek Simmons, as I believe you all know, has moved on to another position. I think that happened before the last meeting. Time is hard. But I just completed the first round of interviews for his position, and we'll be doing a second round next week. And I'm hoping to have that position filled by mid-November. And that's the position that works with entrepreneurs and small business. So not one that works as much with the IDA, just occasionally, but yeah, we're working on that too.
Have you gotten some good applicants in pool of applicants, or?
Yeah, we went for quality over quantity this go around. We didn't do quite as much push out, but we reached out to specific people we thought would be a good fit. So we had fewer applicants, but they were all good applicants.
Okay, is that it, Tracy?
It's kind of hard to have all good applicants.
That's a bad thing? Is that what you're saying?
It's hard. It's hard to make a decision when you have like all these people.
Well, it wasn't hard. It wasn't hard when you interviewed Taylor, was it?
Not at all. She was a shoo-in.
Okay, thank you, Tracy. So, speaking of Taylor, under new business, we have assigned assistant secretary. Tracy, can you help me out with that?
Yep, so typically our technical specialist is assigned the assistant secretary, assistant treasurer, just to help with the day-to-day functioning of the organization. Typically, we do have the normal secretary sign things with this group, so it's more of a formality here. It just helps us get some things signed along the way, but that's about it. And the minutes, as the assistant secretary, she would be doing and submitting the minutes.
Okay. Does anyone have any questions about that? Okay, can I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Moved by Gwen, second by Roger. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Thank you. Okay, we now move to B, report Audit and Finance Committee of the October 21st meeting.
So that was today. We just met Jeff and Jimmy just met to review the proposed budget. Do one of you want to go over this, or do you want to pass?
I'll pass.
Awesome. What about you,
Yeah,
Jeff?
there's really it's on the last page of the packet there, so everybody can see it. The only line item we really kind of discussed was marketing Auburn brand. The $20,000 there is really a high-end kind of placeholder for the ongoing cost next year for the branding project. So that was really the only variance that we had, and anything that we really talked about. But other than that, everything was pretty status quo, I guess I'll say.
I had a question or observation about it, is that we want to realize that the $20,000 placeholder probably will be the expenses for the project next year for our profit and loss, but I think you expect the project to be done next year. Is that correct?
Yeah, so we are expecting that a good portion of it will be done this year, and then we're hoping for a January 2021 launch, but there's a little wiggle room in there, Q1. So most of what is in next year is going to be that phase 3, and
Okay.
so that's what we included on that line was the phase 3.
So our expectation is if it's roughly $80,000 project, 20,000 in 2021, therefore the remaining 60 you expect to expend out of cash in 2020 then, in the next couple of months.
That's what we're hoping.
Okay. Thank you.
Anything else on that report? If not, can I have a motion, please?
I'll make a motion.
Moved by Jimmy, seconded by Ron. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Abstained? Thank you. So we move on. Is there any board member reports? Anyone get anything they want to share?
I don't have anything I want to share. I just wanted to ask Tracy about what your observations are about the impact of COVID, and help me just understand this. We had some funds were making available to small businesses. What's the status of that initiative as well?
So the CEDA emergency microloan is still available.
Mm-hmm.
So if there's anyone who is looking for that, it is there up to $5,000. We still have about $100,000 there in that fund. We'll probably be pushing some of it back to CCDC in the next month or two, but it is still available. The city CDBG grant program was entirely dispersed. Some additional money was put into that from the city's revolving loan fund and granted out. So that program is done. We're in monitoring on that. There's another round of CDBG funding coming. There is a public hearing coming up, or a public meeting coming up regarding how to use those funds. I think they are looking to perhaps hit some of the areas that weren't funded in the first round of CDBG COVID response, but they are taking input on where that money could be expended. I think that public hearing is
It's
next
October
week.
28th.
Thank you.
You're
October
welcome.
20th. And you can register for that online. But as of right now, that program is closed. It's just a microloan that's available locally. The New York Forward Loan Program is still available, and that's been extended to offer loans to businesses that received PPP in less than $50,000 increments. So that's a change. Originally, that fund was not allowing applications from businesses that received PPP. So now the ones that got smaller amounts can apply for that fund. PPP is still out there. AIDA is still available, but only the loans, not the grants that are the loan forwards or the pre-loans. So just the loans are available, not the grants through that program. So some of this stuff is still out there, but locally here, it's right now just the microloan.
So are we still communicating to business owners that those funds are still available?
We do mention it mostly when people ask about it or are asking for resources. We haven't done as much promotion, just blanket promotion about it. We more or less just talk about it when it's requested or when someone is looking for some assistance.
Is that by design, Tracy? Is there a strategy behind not being more proactive in promoting that those funds are available?
I think we just we stopped seeing as many applications, and so I think the demand for it had dropped, and so I think we just started to promote some other things. So it wasn't really by design, it was by demand more than anything. But I do see that there could be some additional demand in the upcoming months, especially as restaurants are not able to use outdoor seating. So I trust your judgment around this, but I think if I'm concerned about that too, even just the uptick in cases in our own community is making me concerned about what the fall and winter is really going to be like. And I think that what I'm observing in a lot of business owners is that they're sort of riding that wave of shock denial, bargaining, pre-acceptance depression, like, oh man, this is my reality. So I wouldn't assume that the silence isn't because of a lack of need. I would observe it as possibly being that business owners are really like hunkered down and trying to make it happen. And because every single day, you never know what Governor Cuomo's going to say to us, that people, the emotional condition of business owners might be some of that too. So as you see fit and feasible, I would encourage you to be proactive in promoting it, because I do think that businesses are going to take another hit, and that if we can use those funds to support some local businesses, I would encourage you to do that. Yes, I have definitely been thinking about this the last couple of health department reports that have come out.
Hello.
So can I just talk on this topic? Can I talk a little bit about CDBG and the money that was made available to us? We had received an additional, I happen to have the email up in front of me, $523,000. We had another $100,000 in a revolving loan fund that Tracy mentioned. Out of that first round, $304,000 went to business assistance. There was some set aside for housing repairs, $170,000 for human services. And the next round, we've been given, I think, $230,000, approximately $230,000. Apparently the direction from HUD was the last round was very business centered. So they wanted us to look at other areas that may need funding. So some of the areas that Jenny had come up with were rental assistance, eviction assistance if people need legal assistance, childcare. BTW has exhausted their emergency funds. They're still providing daycare. So that's why this next meeting is very important. There were some things that were brought up about technology, workforce development. My point there was I think we should really be focusing on immediate relief, like you said, Gwen. And if we can free up some additional funds for businesses, and HUD will approve that because it has to go through an approval process, I'm hoping that we can do that, because I think you're right. I think there's people that are just trying to ride this thing out, and it's going to get to a point where they can't ride it out anymore.
Mhm,
And
mhm.
if we can free up at least, a little bit of that money. And another area that was we were going to focus on was addiction services.
Mhm.
Obviously, we're seeing an uptick there because a lot of the in-person meetings are not able to be held. If they are, they're at a smaller capacity. And that's, I keep in contact with Adam Duckett, and that's one of his major concerns. He's getting the phone calls of addiction, the addiction crisis. So if you have input, please attend that meeting. It's virtual.
Trace, and I don't know the feasibility of this, but I'd also just, or Jimmy, I don't know where this would fall, but I would just check in to see what's going on with the local arts organizations as well. I don't know if that's in our bailiwick. And I'm affiliated with the Central New York Community Foundation, so I was made aware that I think the Cuba Fund has like $100,000. And that they're not getting for COVID relief for not-for-profits. So I know that because they're one of my clients right now. I just got off their board, but I think if we can look at this globally and where we can align dollars, even if it's not us pushing it out, I think we need to have a global understanding of what's happening in the community, because those organizations are also putting money into the economy and just making sure that we're covering the basis to the degree that we can. So, Jamie, just if you can make sure I know the date of that meeting, I'll certainly try to attend. Say it again, was that the October 28th meeting?
October 28th, you can register online.
Okay.
And in regards to arts organizations, in that 304,000 in the first round, we dedicated 80,000 specifically for arts organizations.
Okay.
So all the local arts organizations, APT, Stewart House, Keegan Museum, Schweinfurt, they all received a chunk of money. Willard Chapel.
Because I think that they're being equally impacted. So I think anything we can do sort of, is to kind of check in with them. And when we can, even if it's just we're advocating, we may not be the ones to give them the money, but advocating for people who can give them funding to do it, because it all is part of the puzzle of what I think is driving business in the area. So I think this is good. Thanks, Trace. I was just curious.
Okay, does anyone else have anything? If not, we'll move to executive session. I need a motion to go into executive session, please.
So
Make a motion.
Moved by Jimmy, second by Glenn. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstained? Okay, we're now back in executive session. Can we, I'm sorry, regular session. Can I have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
So moved.
Moved by Gwen, seconded by Roger. Okay, thank you all. Great meeting.
Thank you.
Yep.
Have a good night.
evening.
Good night.
Thanks, bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Take care. Good work, Trace.
Good night. Love you, Gwen.
Bye.